Before I knew what I was born to do, I was spending a lot of energy and creating a lot of noise. I was a very noisy person. I was noisy as a kid. When I speak now, there's much more wisdom in what I have to say and what I have to offer. And there's more insight because of the cumulative investments of people, the cumulative experiences I've had, and the ways I've gone about developing myself. I think that's the big difference. Noise versus wisdom.
You are here. Welcome to the Purpose Finder podcast. This is the show where we uncover why you are truly here and, more importantly, how to make it your reality. My father, the late Dr. Miles Monroe, said the greatest tragedy in life is not death, but life without purpose. And research further shows that people with a strong sense of purpose are 2.4 times more likely to feel fulfilled. Each week, I sit down with extraordinary guests, entrepreneurs, artists, thought leaders who are boldly living their why. We dive deep into their journeys, the struggles they've overcome, their breakthroughs, and the lessons that can help you do the same. I am your beautiful host, Charissa Monroe Wilborn, and we're about to explore the mindsets, tools, and strategies to help you live a life with purpose, passion, and legacy. Are you ready? Let's go and dive into the episode. Ladies and gentlemen, we are back for another amazing, great episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I am your host, Charissa Monroe Wilborn, and you know here our mission is simple: to inspire you to find and uncover your life's purpose and to live a life overflowing with three things: meaning, fulfillment, and significance. Why? Because deep down, we all crave belonging. No one wants to feel unfulfilled, and we're all searching, asking that big question: why in the world am I here? But I hope you allow your answer to be answered here on this podcast and for your search to end with me as your host, Charissa Monroe Wilborn. Today, I sit down with an incredible, amazing brother of mine who is not only talking about purpose, not only thinking about it, but he's walking out his purpose boldly. We're going to hear some of the lessons he's learned and some of the challenges that he's had along his journey to success. Help me welcome Marc Thompson Jr., my brother, Marc. How are you? Thank you for being here.
What's up, sis? So good to see you. Thank you for having me. Thank you to the Purpose Finder podcast viewers and listeners for receiving me as well. I'm excited to be here.
Absolutely. I'm so excited for what you're about to share with us because you are doing great things. You are. I'm not gonna be the one to tell them what you do and who you are. I would like for you to share that, but I want them to hear what you are doing so great in the world, but also how you got there, so that they can see themselves in your story and then be able to say, you know what, if he did it, so can I. So please tell the listeners who you are, what you do, where you're from, and all that great stuff.
Okay. I am Marc Thompson Jr. I am the child of Ralph Marcus Thompson Sr. and Cheryl Jones, born and raised in Queens, New York. I am the firstborn to them with two other sisters, Tanisha and Thea. And then I also have brothers Andre, Jacob, and Hassan, as well as Teresa. That's our family of hers, his, theirs, and others. That's how we talk about our family. We're blended. And born and raised in Queens, like I said, educated in New York City public school. And I would say it was in junior high school where my life started to take shape for what I'm doing today, in that I had a Spanish teacher by the name of Miss Constance Harris. She was the most beautiful woman I had seen up until that point. And I asked her what her husband did for a living. And I said, Charissa, this was a pivotal moment. And I didn't know it was a pivotal moment. But it turned out to be a pivotal moment because when I asked her what her husband did for a living, and she turned and said that her husband was an accountant, two things happened. One, she didn't shut me down. She could have easily have said, this is not why we're in school. You don't get to ask me questions about my personal life. Pay attention to the curriculum. Pay attention to class. Don't worry about my personal life. And she could have crushed my little 12-year-old heart, and who would have known what I would have become. So she didn't shut me down, and two, she answered my question. And in answering my question, I then made a decision. I said, if accountants get beautiful women like this, when I grow up, I'm going to be an accountant. And so from 12 years old, I knew what I was going to do. She asked me, did I know what an accountant was? I wasn't a person of integrity at that point. I lied and said I did, but I had no idea what an accountant was at 12 years old. But then I learned what it was. And so I'm also grateful that Mr. Harris Lennox wasn't a construction worker, because I don't think I would be as successful in construction as I am in accounting. So I'm grateful he picked a good career that happened to match my gifts. I go on to college, I go through public school, graduate from high school with a Regents diploma, stuff like that. And I go to college, I major in accounting. I meet Coach Showers, who becomes like a godfather and mentor to me, as well as Mr. Christensen, who was a tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed, Viking-like guy who really loved accounting. And so he was able to inspire me to be passionate about accounting because of the passion he brought to the topic. And graduated in 1991, and that was during the first Gulf War, or the first war in the Middle East, and dealing with Desert Storm and all of that kind of stuff. And so the economy was tough, similar to how it is now. Very tough economy. And so I didn't get a job out of school right away. I had to work some temp jobs. And in working those temp jobs, I worked at places like Sony Music and other places, just developing the skills. But it was also around that time that I had read and started to apply understanding your potential and releasing your potential. And I would say releasing your potential, I would offer that as a resource to your listeners and your viewers. If you haven't read that book, I encourage you deeply to read that book, because it is the philosophy and the theology of work that really changed my life. When I realized that work was the mechanism to develop my potential and my leadership, to give me a platform to do the things that my Dominion gift would allow me to do, that's when work really transitioned in my mind from drudgery to something developmental. And if you're approaching your work as drudgery versus developmental, it's probably because you're not connecting what you're doing to where you're going. And releasing your potential helped me make that connection. So I end up getting my first full-time job working for the Associated Press in their domestic desk. Then I get promoted 2 years later to their international desk. After fulfilling 5 years, I transitioned and I go work for a German conglomerate, Gruner and Yard USA Publishing. I do 18 months there, and then I move on to where I think my leadership and my approach to life really started to blossom, and I was at the NFL. And I spent 7.5 years working at the NFL. And then I came to a pivotal point at the NFL where I got passed over 3 times for the same opportunity, the assistant controller of the league office. 3 different occasions the job came open, 3 different occasions I got passed over. And so by that time, Roger Goodell, the current commissioner, at the time he was an EVP, he was my mentor. And I went to him and I said, Roger, look, I've been passed over 3 times for an opportunity that I really think I'm qualified for. I said, so basically the way I see myself and the way the financial leadership team sees me, we're disconnected, we're not aligned. So here's what's going to happen. I'm going to go out to the marketplace and I'm going to come back with 3 job offers. And when I come back with those offers, you're going to help me decide which one is the best one. And Roger was like, well, Mark, I'm not paying you to go find another job. I go, no, I'm not going to cheat the game. I'm going to use my vacation time, my sick time, whatever. I'm going to go do this because I need you to know, and I need to prove to myself that I got value in the marketplace that's not being recognized here at the NFL.
Wow.
So true to my aspiration, I was able to go out and get 3 job offers, not just interviews, 3 job offers. Lucent Technologies, Ajax, and GE. And when we sat down and had the conversation, we both agreed that GE was the best option. The thing about GE, and shout out to my brother Scott Brown, so the way I came to that moment was shout out to Charles White, a mentor of mine, he told me, Charissa, and you know, you've known me for a long time, so you'll recognize this as an accurate description of me 10, 15 years ago. He said, Mark, you're fat, black, and happy. And I didn't always realize that I was chubby, but I was chubby. And he said, you're not going to get the opportunity you think you deserve. You need to go pursue it someplace else. And that was like a gut punch because I really loved being at the NFL. I thought I was a popular, well-respected employee, but Charles's conversation with me really crystallized that what I thought was happening and what was really happening were not the same thing. And so he helped me start to craft an approach to exiting the NFL by pursuing a new opportunity. And it began with writing down the companies that I would want to work for. And I know it's going to sound kind of corny, but the number one company was GE. And the reason it was GE is if you think back to the early 2000s, GE was the number one company in the world, and it was the number one company for leadership development in the world. Well, I felt that I had the capacity to be a bigger leader than I was experiencing at the NFL. So what's the best place to go get that leadership potential developed than the best leadership company in the world, GE. So it was at the top of my list. And then Charles walked me through an approach where he said, now let's go through and see who do we know that might know somebody at GE. Well, it turned out my brother from another mother, Scott Brown, knew a guy named Archie Elam, whose wife Deb at the time was working in HR at GE. My resume gets to Archie, Archie gets it to Deb, Deb puts it on a portal, and I get a call from a guy named Roger Favano, two Rogers. Roger Favano calls me while I'm working an audit out in Arizona, says, hey, we're GE and we're interested in you if you're still interested in us. I'm like, I'm absolutely interested. Get home, we work the calendar. I go for 9 interviews in one day in 3 different locations, Stanford, Norwalk, and Danbury. I thought they were just trying to test my stamina, right? Because it was just a marathon of interviews. Comes out, I end up being offered the job at GE Real Estate, and that's where I say my career really changed because I was paired with a manager. Her name is Stephanie Jimenez. She's the best direct manager I've ever had in my career, and she invested in my development, in my growth, and in my progress in a disproportionate way that really helped accelerate my career. So I'm at GE. In 2006, we go to this event called the African American Forum Symposium, and it is there I'm with a former college classmate, Kelly Tate, who was also at GE. He and I share a room, and in July of 2006, we make a commitment and a covenant with each other that we were going to do our best and focus and apply ourselves to try to get to executive in 5 years. And we go through the ropes, we go through the processes, and thanks to who I'll call the 4 horsemen, Jameer Jackson, Thomas Kendidi, Joe Allen, and Bill Lacey, they helped position me. Also can't forget my man Ernest Evans and Amos Shandika. They helped me prepare and develop and get exposure so that by May 2011, I made an executive in GE. That same year, 2011, is when your niece Nia was born. And so she's born in September of that year. In July of that year, I moved from Connecticut, working in Connecticut, to working in Schenectady. And that's where my first executive role takes place. And then,
Now, before we continue, I want to interject here, Mark, because now you've said all of that and then you've made it to Nia.
yep,
Now,
yeah,
you said all of that and then you say Nia is born.
yeah,
I do know you long enough to know that it was not as simple and as easy and as picnic of a
yeah,
ride
yeah,
as you have made it sound.
yeah,
And so I need my audience to understand. You listen to these last 10 minutes of Mark go through, where he was born and then kind of all through life of work and school and then working and then where he's at now and going up the chain and going through all of this professionally. But then his daughter is born. But his daughter's birth, but also leading up to her birth was also not so easy.
right.
So I want you to share, Mark, kind of bring that whole 9 months process leading up to Nia's conception and then the whole birthing process and how that affected or intertwined with all of these other things that are happening in your life professionally.
Okay. So I'll take a step back. August 2nd, 1997, my biological father dies. November 12th, 1997, my baby brother, Hassan, dies. January 17th, 1998, I get married. So the 100 days of August 2nd to November 12th, the hardest 100 days of my life. November 12th to January 17th, the darkest days of my life. And then Jesse and I are married. We're married a couple of years, and then we say, hey, maybe we should add to our family. So around 2001, we say we're going to add to our family, and it doesn't happen easily or at all, right? Then we realize we have some challenges. We go through in vitro fertilization cycles, and Jessie gets pregnant, and it's in June of 2008. And we're excited and we're happy. And then we go for a regular sonogram checkup, and the technician is doing something, and then they come back and they say, I'll be right back. And they come back with somebody else, and they say, we're not getting a heartbeat.
Mm.
And we realize that the excitement, the joy is now turning to pain because this particular pregnancy is not going to end well. And it was crushing. I had just moved from the NFL in 2006. So I'm at GE for maybe 18 months. And we have this challenge. And I remember as we were leaving the hospital, Jesse started to, cry. And I said, not here, not here. I said, we're not going to cry here. We'll cry when we're alone. We're not going to cry here. And that was the longest walk from the hospital to the parking lot I've ever had in my life.
Mm.
And so then Jesse had some other health challenges, and we get to a place where Jesse is like, Mark, we've been through 4 IVF cycles, and we've not been able to get pregnant. Do I want to do it again? And she's like, tell me what you want me to do. And I said, no, I'm not going to tell you what I want you to do. She's like, well, pray with me. I'm like, no, I'm not going to pray with you about it because I don't want anything that I want to interfere with what really should be happening. I said, this is your body. We don't know the long-term implications of all these drugs that you're taking. I can't demand that you do this. I said, God knows I want a child, and specifically a boy, right? God knows I want a son, but I didn't marry you because you could give me children. I married you because I wanted to marry you. I thought being married, we would have kids. If that's not how it plays out, that's just the hand we dealt, and we got to rock with it. She decides of her own volition to go for the 5th IVF cycle. That 5th IVF cycle happens in early 2011. We find out that it sticks in February 2011. And then, we go through the process of pregnancy, and she delivers Nia. So she goes into the hospital in July of 2011, and Jesse doesn't exit the hospital until the middle of September. She's in the hospital for more than 10 weeks with Nia. Nia is in the hospital for 30 days. And it is that process of pregnancy, delivery, and NICU time that I really just learned what it means to deal with challenge. at a different level of emotion. Let me take one step back. So when we dealt with the miscarriage, I was able to call mom and dad, mama and papa and mama, and got them on the phone. And then I connected Jesse onto the call, and mama and papa prayed for Jesse. And I'll never forget where I was. I was in New Life Christian Bookstore on Queens Boulevard here in Queens, New York. And I was standing in the book area when I got Papa on the phone, and I told him what happened. And he like, "Where's Jess? I want to pray with her." And he got her. He was on the phone. He got Mama on the phone, and then I connected them with Jesse, and they just prayed with her and loved on her. And it was a really important moment for us because there was a lot of pain, but then Mom and Dad were able to share some wisdom and some encouragement that just stabilized things for us. And so then we get to where Nia is born, and we knew for a long time, we knew what her name was going to be because, as
Mm.
you know, Nia means purpose in Swahili, and Dad had introduced
Mm-hmm.
that to us decades earlier. And I was like, man, when I have a daughter, if I have a daughter, her name is going to be Nia. Now, I wanted her name to be Nia Imani, purpose and faith. Jesse wanted her name to be Nia Madison, which means a purposeful warrior. And so because Jessie went through all she went through, I definitely wasn't going to argue
You
with her.
digress.
And so she got
Of
Madison,
course.
right? So Nia Madison Thompson was born on September 8th, 2011. And the journey to motherhood and fatherhood for us was challenging, very challenging. But we had a community of people who loved on us, supported us, helped us. And then once she came into the world, we had that same support.
Now, how did you balance all of these challenges leading up to the birth and then the birth while still working and climbing up the ladder and trying to remain professionally sound?
So shout out to my mother, Miss Cheryl M. Jones, and shout out to Jesse's sister, Felicia T. Scott. I was in Schenectady. Everything was happening. Jesse went into the hospital in Long Island, 3.5, 4 hours away. So what would happen is during the day, Monday through Friday, Felicia would spend the night, come home, shower, take my mother to the hospital. Felicia would work the whole day, then come to the hospital, bring my mother home, go back to the hospital, and spend the night with Jesse. And they did that for 90 days.
Wow.
I came home on Friday night, I go to the hospital, I'd stay Friday night, Saturday, then I'd be leaving Sunday. So I only did like a day and a half in the hospital. They did 5.5, 6 days in the hospital, and they did that for 90 days. So I was able to focus on my job and focus on my work during the week. On the weekend, I came home, and I could never repay my mother and Felicia for the sacrifice and the investment that they made, but that's what they did, and that's how I was able to keep growing my career while my family was under challenge, is because I had a network and a support and a village that rallied behind me and really supported us.
Wow, that's a blessing because not
Absolutely.
not many people can do it. And did it take a toll on you mentally, psychologically, or were you still able to do that and still be at peace knowing that Jesse was in good hands and Nia was in good hands?
So, obviously it's challenging, right?
Absolutely.
So when people think pregnancy, they think mother, right? And rightfully so.
Automatically.
And rightfully
Yes.
so. But there's a lot when you're the father of a baby that isn't yet born that people don't anticipate. Like you have
Mm.
visions of how this is going to play out, and you have expectations of how this is going to play out, and you have hopes of how this is going to play out. And so, whether it's a miscarriage or if it's a problem pregnancy, all of that is at threat and at risk when it's not playing out. So it's a heavy emotional thing and a heavy mental thing when the baby, because Nia was under a condition called fetal growth restriction syndrome, because Jesse had fibroids that was siphoning the blood away from Nia and growing and challenging Nia for the nutrition. So Nia was born 2 pounds and I think 14 ounces, small baby, because the fibroids were taking all of the nutrition. At one point, the doctor brought us into his office. One of my visits from Schenectady, I came down for a doctor's visit. He takes us in his office, and as caring and as concerned as a doctor can be, he communicates to us that the womb is a toxic environment for the baby. At that time, I thought Nia was a boy, so I was like, my little man is going to show you that he can tough it out in this toxic environment. And the doctor was like, you could consider terminating the pregnancy because your wife's life is at risk in this environment. And Jesse and I had already had the conversation because he had told Jesse that prior to my coming in her last visit. And so I said, Doc, we respect you and we respect what you do and we respect your practice of medicine. But we're people of faith and we believe that the baby and Jesse are going to come through just fine. And he's like, okay. And so then it became a phrase, another sunrise, because every day was a risk. So Jesse goes into the hospital, and I'll never forget, there was this nurse. I came home because Jesse had been rushed to the hospital. I came home a little early, and I get to the hospital, and I see the nurse, and I'm like, nurse, because Jesse looked like she was going into labor, and this would have been way too early. This would have been like week 24, week 25, way too early. And the nurse was like, Mr. Thompson, we're just trying to get your wife stable. I said, okay, well, once you get her stable, when can I take her home? And she's like, take her home? She goes, we're just trying to prevent the baby from coming this weekend. I said, oh, I can assure you, the baby's not going to come this weekend. And she's like, and she gives me that look like, who do you think you are? Like, I'm the doctor. How are you speaking so confidently? But I was just resting in the reality. Now, again, I did think it was a boy, so I was just resting in the reality that my little man is going to fight through. Teresa, what I didn't know, in these toxic environment pregnancies, boys don't fare well. For whatever reason, boys don't fare well. In these kinds of situations, girls fare better. I don't know why, but for whatever reason, girls fare better. So meanwhile, I'm thinking I'm having a boy, I'm having a girl, and the reason I have a girl is because the girl, God knows, will come through. And so Nia is born. Her name is Purpose. She's a warrior because she had to fight to get here. And the journey to fatherhood was much different than I had thought in my head, but it was everything I needed to build me into the kind of person I need to be the father that she needed.
I'm here in Mexico City at the Pave the Path Retreat 2024.
This first day has been amazing.
We tend to look for answers on the outside of ourselves, but a lot of our solutions to our problems are on the inside of us.
If I had to wrap this up in one word, I would use the word transformative.
One thing I learned day one is, I guess, be open to the applause when you have people that are on your side cheering you on.
Transformation is a process, so I don't expect us to get to a place where we're completely transformed. You should never be transformed. There should always be a transforming continually happening.
My relationship to love is that I believe love is something you have to conquer. So I always go for challenging people versus love is something that you find, or love is something that finds you, where then I would date the people who actually want to be with me and not the ones who are avoiding.
If you want to return home unrecognizable, make sure you are with us next year. You don't want to miss such a beautiful experience.
I've already been thinking of people that I want to run home and tell, and I'm excited to come back next year.
Position yourself to be poured into so you can be served from your overflow, but make sure that who and what is pouring into you is pouring in life. It's pouring in empowerment. It's pouring in good, positive vibes, because you don't want to be filling and pouring and overflowing on serving the people you serve with a bunch of oil.
Y'all better come on this retreat.
And now you have an amazing, she's 13 years old, I think.
Yeah, she's 13 now.
Oh, and she is a fighter. She's a warrior. If she wasn't on this podcast, she'd be able to tell you alone what it is that she is a guest all by herself.
That's it.
But she's doing amazing things in the world, and I love it. But she's following after the steps and the ideology and the commitment and determination of her parents. Yeah. And I'm allowing Marc to go through this whole story of life and his journey, because Marc, can you share with us what you do now? And then I still want us to go back, but I want you to share what it is you're doing right now in the world 2025.
So I'm going to take a step back just to set it up. So in April 2015, GE decides to get out of financial services, and my job is going to be eliminated. I'm an executive. My job is going to get eliminated because financial services is no longer going to be a part of the portfolio of the General Electric company. And so in October of 2016, a mentor of mine, Shelly Cleveland, says, Marc, you need to think about starting your own business. I'm like, Shelly, I'm not an entrepreneur, back of a napkin kind of guy. I need structure. I need systems. I need processes. She's like, I hear you. Pray about it. Think about it. You need to start your own business. I happen to have to be in the city for a meeting, and I'm on 6th Avenue and 46th Street, and I see a Chick-Fil-A. And I'm like, Chick-Fil-A is in New York? I'm like, wow, this could be the ground floor of a rocket ship. So I called Shelly. I'm like, Shelly, did you know Chick-Fil-A, because she's from Georgia, did you know Chick-Fil-A was going to be in New York? She's like, yeah, I think they are growing. She connects me to somebody that used to work at GE, that works at Chick-fil-A. His name is Chris. Shout out to Big Chris. Chris tells me, hey, man, I can't help you, but I'll connect you to somebody. He connects me to an operator named Marlon Terrell. Shout out to Marlon. Marlon has a conversation with me. Now, this is 2016-17, where he shares, 2016, he shares with me that Chick-fil-A receives 80,000 applications a year, and they only select 120 people. So I'm like, all right, I get it. I said, GE had over 350,000 people. I got to be an executive there. I know how to get through a funnel. If it's for me, it's for me. If it's not for me, the Lord will point me in a different direction. Mm-hmm. I said, but do you think, based on what I've told you about my story and my background, do you think I should apply? Marlon's like, I encourage you to apply. So with his encouragement, I applied. And I went through the process. And as I was going through the process, somebody told me, listen, it's going to take all of 2 years for us to get through and decide if we're going to be in business together. And so on August 3rd, 2018, Chick-fil-A selected me to be the owner-operator of Chick-fil-A 5 Towns in Rosedale, New York, which is in my backyard, the community I grew up in. When I got selected, they told me that I would be opening October 10th, 2019. October 10th, 2019 also was my 50th birthday. And so I had planned to throw this 50th birthday party that was going to be big and elaborate anyway. Shout out to you and Charo. Y'all pulled up to the party. And we thought we would be opening, but we didn't open. And we didn't open until September 2022. Part of that is the pandemic. Part of that is New York City and its regulations. But we did open in 2022, started serving our community. And in the last almost 30 months of operations, we've done over $20 million in revenue, paid out more than $4 million in salaries, and we've created more than 400 jobs in that time period. And we have about 65 families that we're supporting right now on the payroll, which I'm very excited to do.
It's amazing. So you are the owner of, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, but you're the owner of the one of Chick-fil-A's franchises
Yes, that's exactly right.
in Jersey
Queens,
and
in Queens.
in Queens,
Yep.
in Queens,
Hmm.
pardon, and the journey to this pinnacle of your life and this apex of your life has been one of ups and downs and valleys.
Yes.
What has been three things, Marc, that along the way, because of the challenges that you've gone through, whether it's the professional challenges, the personal challenges, the spiritual challenges, what are three things, three lessons that you learned because of any particular challenge that you went through just to get to where you are right now?
So you might remember you guys had me for one of the Monroe Global sessions when y'all used to do those, and the Mel events. And I'm gonna lay out the lesson of what of what I think everybody needs to have as they go through challenges, right? There's this thing that's called um, when you convince yourself that you can't do or accomplish something. There's a technical psychological term, and the way it works is you start to believe that everything is personal. And so the rejections, the disappointments, the tragedies, you personalize it. And when you personalize it, then it starts to look pervasive. And so it's like everywhere you turn, there's a problem. Everywhere you turn, the world is against you. And so it becomes personal, it becomes pervasive, and then it becomes permanent. These three things are the components of learned helplessness. And I just do the opposite, or I learned to do the opposite. I learned that it wasn't personal, that it wasn't pervasive. I was having challenges in some areas of my life, but not every area of my life. And that it wasn't going to be permanent. This stuff can't last forever because the probabilities are in my favor. And so those are the lessons I learned over time that I think has served me well to get through the challenges. Don't take things personally. Keep a big macro perspective. Don't look at your life and interpret it as pervasive, because there are actual things that are working really well in your life that you have to stay focused on, because the things that are not working well can be so distracting and all consuming that you lose sight of what is working well, and never believe that the conditions you're facing are permanent. Everything is subject to change. Everything can change. And those three things help me navigate the ups, downs, ins, outs, highs, lows, mountaintops, and valleys. Because I don't take it personally, I don't believe it's pervasive, and it's definitely not permanent.
That is good. I love it. And I think a lot of people, especially today, in this society that we're living in, take things personally.
Mm-hmm.
Challenges especially. And if something happens to them, they feel like they either deserved it, or the world is out for me, or there was something that I could have done to avoid or to
Mm-hmm.
prevent this adversity or challenge. And sometimes that is the case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then there's some things that happen to us that we have no control over.
Yes.
And as you take things personally, they do get to settle and become just internally pervasive.
Mm-hmm.
And like my dad used to always say, like, change is one of the most constant things. And so to make a permanent decision in a temporary situation is the worst thing that you can do.
Absolutely right.
And so when we understand that the season that we're in, the challenges you're dealing with, the adversities you're facing are not permanent, then we get to, for that moment or for that season, however long it may be. Some seasons are short, some seasons may be years, months, but we get to say, okay, this too shall pass.
Yep.
This too will pass. I don't have to permanently make decisions that I can't take back.
Exactly right.
And I appreciate that, because when I go back to your challenge with Nia, like that was a very long process for both you and Jesse.
10 years. 10 years.
Exactly.
10 years to have
10
one
years.
baby.
To have one baby.
Yeah, 10 years.
Who,
10 years.
you know, as much as you may have wanted a boy, you
That's
got
it.
a girl, but her being a girl had a purpose.
Look, let me tell you, I thought I wanted boys, but I promise you, I wouldn't trade that little girl for 12 boys. That
Really?
is, I again, so when Nia was born, I had to go to my dad, my second dad. I had to go to him. She's about 6 months old, and I had to apologize to him. And I said, Dad, I apologize because for my whole life, the way I viewed you, I never said this to you, but in my head, you were a sucker. I said, because the way my sisters worked you and the way you just collapsed and fell into their hand like putty, I thought you were just the biggest punk that has ever walked the planet.
Now you see.
And I said, but now that Nia's on the planet, I see it's just what daughters do to fathers. It's like kryptonite to Superman. They just break you down. And I said, I apologize. And we had a good laugh about it. We had a good laugh.
Absolutely. And so if you had to, if you had to say, because through all of this, even through those 100 days, Mark, that you talked about, that was the most challenging, hardest 100 days of your life.
Mm-hmm.
But what was it that caused you during that 100 days, during the challenges you've had with Nia, and then the challenges that you've had with starting Chick-Fil-A, but what was it that caused you not to quit, not to crumble, not to stop? Because at some point you had to be like, I'm depressed, first of all.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to do it. Like, what about it was it purpose related? Was it just, that's just who you are? Please, what share? Because I know there are a lot of people who are in the thicket and they are this close from saying, I quit, I'm done.
So if you quit when it's bad, it can't get better.
Mm.
And if it's bad and it can't get better, that means it can only get worse. And so quitting in the midst of challenge doesn't help. So some of it is all about perseverance, right? And grit and grind and resilience. But then it's also about believing better is ahead of me. Like I used to say when we were going through this, I'm like, Jess, I'm a blessed man. I'm a blessed man. But all my blessings come with challenge. And I said, I don't know why, but all my blessings come with challenge. And I realize now on the other side of these challenges that those challenges were the periods of preparation where my dominion gift would then make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
And if I don't go through those periods of challenge, I don't have the reservoir of strength and wisdom and patience and faith to draw on when I get to a place where things aren't as challenging. And so I didn't quit because I knew if I quit, it wasn't going to get better. And if it wasn't going to get better, it was going to get worse. And I didn't want things to get worse. So I had to fight through whatever it was, whatever the turbulence, whatever the headwind was, to get to better so that I had a chance at better. Because I knew quitting wasn't going to make things better.
So even during those 100 days when you lost your father, you lost your uncle,
Brother.
brother, you lost your younger brother, how did you work through the depression as a man?
Yeah.
As a man,
Yeah,
how did you work through the depression?
So Jessie and I got married shortly after her son's death, right? And so people talk about their first year of marriage, and they did this and they did that. Charissa, I don't remember my first year of marriage. I have no recollection of that first year. What I know I did, I woke up, went to work, came home, went to sleep. I would sleep 12 to 15 hours a day. That's how I got through it. I just slept. I slept through. My depression manifested as sleep.
Wow.
I just slept. I can't tell you. I don't remember anything about our first year. I do remember our first anniversary. We went to the River Cafe in Brooklyn. I remember that. I don't remember any of the other 364 days. I have no recollection of anything.
So how did you get out of that then? How did you then get out of the depression that you were in?
And you know, and so I don't want to make light of it, right? There are people that are clinically depressed and they need therapy and they need medication and all of that stuff is real. I wasn't clinically depressed. I was deeply sad. I was hurt. And one day I just thought I was in church and I was like, look, I can't stay this way. I can't live the rest of my life crying over my dad, crying over my brother, mad at life, mad at what happened. It happened. It hurts. I'm never going to be the same, but I can't let it change the future. And so, not overnight, but over time, I just started to rise on the inside. And eventually, I started to walk, you know, maybe with a limp, but I was walking.
Well, and I think it's encouraging for other men and women to hear.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you may not be diagnosed with depression, so we're looking at it from, you know, on a wide spectrum. But a whole lot of us go through that process of loss and grief, and it might be you lost a loved one, you lost a job, you lost your house, you lost your money, you lost, like, there's grief and loss attached to any and everything in life. But do you have to stay there? And for Mark, it lasted for at least a year, but he knew he couldn't stay there. Like, how many of you are at a place where you know, I can't stay here, I don't want to stay here? And so you do what you need to do, whether that's seeking counseling, whether that's for many of you, it may be pulling on to the faith that you have. It could be just speaking to other people or just allowing yourself to go through what you go through, still feel all of your feelings, but don't stay there. Don't stay there. And I'm glad to hear, Mark, that you're, because it's funny you say you don't remember the first year of your marriage because that happened right after your brother and then your dad, or dad and then your brother. I remember for my brother and I, my parents died November of 2014. The whole next year is a blur for us.
Absolutely.
And we did a lot.
Absolutely.
We were doing a lot, traveling all over the place. People wanted us to speak everywhere. But for the first 365 days, it was truly a blur. How we got through the day by day, I have no idea.
You can't
Because
remember
you truly,
2015. You can't remember 2015.
I can't remember. I can't remember it at all. And part of 2016.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
Yeah.
As I get into 2017, 2018, I could now remember.
Yeah.
But I remember just being, like you say, I don't know that I was depressed, but I know that there was still a lot of heavy pain. There was still a lot of heavy hurt. But then also there was still the balancing of, you know, we both accepted this mantle now. So we're still having to carry that cross on a limp, not knowing what in the world we're doing.
And Teresa, I want to make sure I make this clear. I didn't grit it out, white knuckle it out by myself. I had a community. I had a team of brothers, had a team of sisters. I had a team of spiritual folks who loved on me, supported me, invested in me, cheered me on. Like it was a lot going on. And I wouldn't be where I am without that circle of men, without that circle of women, without that circle of people who were with me in the trenches, in the highs, in the lows, in the mountains, on the mountains, in the valleys, in the depths, in the heights. Like I have people that rock with me through it all. And so Dad used to say this a lot. I'm not a gift. I'm a result. And I'm a result of a lot of inputs from a lot of people. And so I was able to get through all that I was going through because I had a village of people who loved me, cared for me, invested in me, supported me, strengthened me, and upheld me in tough times.
And so, as you see, no one is exempt. No one, and Mark is, you're looking at, and you're listening to a very high achiever of a guy. I mean, he's the owner of Chick-Fil-A now, but even back then, I'm sure he was an executive and, climbing up the ladders at work, just doing great professionally. But he's still going through what he's going through, and his human nature, his human form is still there. And like it can happen to any of us. It can happen to anyone. No one is exempt from the changes and the challenges and adversities of life. But we also don't have to stay there. Like I want you to be able to see part of your story, a part of your life, part of your very circumstances in Mark's life and Mark's story. And he did not stay there. Yes, 100 days is a very long time. He said 100 days was the most challenging days of his life. 100 days is a long time. 100 days is at least 2 years, if not 2 years. And that's a very long time. But it also is not long compared to the rest of his 50 plus odd years of life, where he has. Are you 50, Mark? I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Am I aging
I'm
you too? Okay.
55.
Oh, okay. So he's had this great life, but 2 years out of it, it may have been the worst 2 years. But he can talk about the rest. You can share about the rest. Go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, so that 100 days on the calendar, it's like a little bit more than 3 months. But to your point, Charissa, that 100 days was probably 5 years, right? Because I'm carrying hurt a long time. Like so my dad and brother die in 97. I get married in 98, and I changed jobs in 98. And that's a lot of change. That's a lot of movement. But I'm doing it hurt. And people don't know you're hurt. People can't necessarily see the hurt. But I'm moving. And like I said, that entire year, January of 98 to January of 99, I'm just on autopilot, going through it. And there are people listening to us who are on autopilot right now because of the trauma that they're surviving. And I want to celebrate, not condemn, that you're on autopilot, because at least you're moving. At least you're doing something. Like, there would be days I would look myself in the mirror and I'm like, man, at least you got up and went to work today. Like, that was an accomplishment, because the way I was feeling, the way I was thinking, I could have preferred to just stay in the bed with the sheets over my head and not move. But I was moving. So I salute and I celebrate people dealing with pain, dealing with loss, dealing with hurt, dealing with trauma, that you're at least moving. Celebrate that you're not sitting still. And if you are in pain and you are in trauma and you are sitting still, sit still and think through what it's going to be like to move.
Especially when you recognize that it won't be permanent.
Absolutely.
It won't be permanent.
Absolutely.
And I stand corrected on my math. I'm saying 100 days, but I'm thinking 52 weeks. And so I'm multiplying that by 2 to get 100. Yeah. But yes, 100 days is a little over 3 months. But even that, like 3 months, 100 days, 3 months is a long time. For some, that may be long. For others, that may be short, because some of us, we go through, that dark period for years and years. And I would wish that on nobody.
But like I said, I really, that 100 days, I probably carried it for 5 years. Like I don't. There are times, and I'm sure this is true for you. There are times out of the blue, I just start crying because I think about my dad. I think about my brother. I'm like, man, where did that come from? But it just happens. Comes in waves. Comes at the. Sometimes it's joyous moments, like when the store opens and you're like, man, I wish Dad was here to see this, right? Or it's moments where you read something on the news and some young person has lost their life and you're like, man, my brother was that old when he died. Like it just happens, right? But you got to keep moving. You got to keep moving.
You do have to keep moving. You do have to keep moving. And as we talk about keep moving, the time keeps moving, and I'm like, where is it going? I'm so enjoying this conversation, Mark.
Yeah.
But we're coming up. We're coming to the end,
Okay.
and time is no longer on our side. But I do want to ask, if you compare your life between or before and after when you discovered what it is you were truly meant to do on this earth, how would you describe it? Before and after purpose, if you will.
So, and obviously, before I knew what I was born to do, I was spending a lot of energy and creating a lot of noise. I was a
A lot of
very
noise.
noisy person. I think anybody that knew me on the come up would say, Ralph or Mark, whatever they called me, they'd be like, that dude was a lot of noise. Like, let me tell you. So I have a high school friend. Her name is Sudi. When I graduated from high school, Sudi, we were talking from college, and she said, she calls me Ralph by my government name. She calls me Ralph. And she's like, Ralph, I'm praying for you because I'm worried about you because I don't know how you are going to turn out, right? Because high school, I was a little wild boy. I didn't have focus. I didn't have, right? But we just had lunch. I was in Charlotte, and we just had lunch recently. No, breakfast. We had breakfast recently. And she was telling me how proud of me she was because she's seen the maturation. Like, I still got the energy. I still have the vibrancy, but I've matured. And I think that's the difference. Like, I was noisy as a kid. When I speak now, there's much more wisdom in what I have to say and what I have to offer. And there's more insight because of the cumulative investments of people, the cumulative experiences I've had, and the ways I've gone about developing myself. I think that's the big difference. Noise versus wisdom.
Words versus wisdom. Oh, I love it. Love to hear it. Oh, thank you so much, Mark, for
Thanks,
sharing.
sis.
Thank you for
Yeah.
your transparency, for being so open. Please share one last best, greatest advice you can leave with the men and women listening
Yeah.
right now.
So the thing I would say is discover, develop, and deploy your dominion gift. Discover, develop, and deploy your dominion gift. That is the most important thing you can do. It's your dominion gift is the thing that's going to differentiate you. And once you're differentiated, whether it's in the marketplace or in ministry or in podcasts or in music, once you're differentiated, everything else happens. But it's not until you're differentiated do you stand out from the crowd.
And the other word that we can think about when you say differentiated is unique. Like, what makes you unique? What sets you apart? I love that. Thank you so much. Discover, develop, and deploy your purpose and who you are. I hope that the gems you've heard, I hope that the stories and the lessons you've heard from Mark's journey can be one that you can apply to your life today to bring transformation and breakthrough so that you can live your life with purpose, on purpose, for a purpose. Mark, as we close, I love to end on my favorite note. And I want to ask you, what's your favorite? 'Cause I love food. I'm a foodie. Oh, and you own my favorite restaurant, well, fast food restaurant that is. If and where I live,
Yeah,
Chick-fil-A
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
not close. So it's not just at my reach like all the other fast food chains. So if we are
Okay.
ever in a neighborhood and Chick-fil-A is there, my
Yeah.
husband knows. You wouldn't even gotta ask. Pull right over. And so what is
Pull
your
over.
favorite food and favorite restaurant?
So my favorite food, Right now, so my all-time favorite dish
Okay.
is lasagna. I love lasagna. But at Chick-fil-A, my favorite thing to eat is a market salad with a
There's
hot
absolutely
grilled
no
filet.
way, no
That's my
shade,
favorite go-to
however,
meal.
that I'm going to Chick-fil-A to order no salad. Let it be no. Let me put it on record. No salad. I'm aware. I'm
You
aware. I've
make a
had the
great salad
salads.
though,
I do
sis.
like
I'm
the
telling you.
salads.
You make a
But
great salad.
Chick-fil-A makes a mean number 6. Add cheese on multi-grain with that Sunjoy. Drink light ice, large fry. Oh,
Ooh, nice.
love Chick-fil-A. Oh,
Nice.
love it. Oh, this has been wonderful, Mark. Thank you so much.
Nice.
And I know
Nice.
that, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, I know that
You
those
know
who
I
have
love
been
you, sis.
listening, I know their lives are on the way to being changed, to being empowered, and also inspired. This has been another great episode of your Purpose Finder podcast. I am your host, Charissa Monroe Wilborn. And until next time, see you soon. Bye. And ladies and gentlemen, that is a wrap on this episode of the Purpose Finder podcast. I hope today's conversation lit a fire within you, because purpose isn't just something you chase. It is something you live every single day. If this episode resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Your feedback helps us reach more people on their journey to purpose. Let's continue the journey together. Join the Purpose Finder community on Facebook for exclusive insights, tools, and a tribe of purpose-driven people just like you. And remember, the 2 most important days in your life are the day you are born and the day you find out why. Your purpose isn't far off. It's already within you. It's time for you to uncover it and live it boldly. Until next time, stay inspired, stay intentional, and keep walking in your purpose.